Blog Talk Radio.
Paranormal Review Radio.
Hello and welcome everyone. It is Friday night and you're listening to Paranormal Review Radio, the only radio show without commercials and more great paranormal talk. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Anthony Agati in New York.
And I'm Luci Liebfried in Chicago. Put the kids in bed and get comfy because you're about to have a Paranormal Friday night. Welcome friends, family, fellow investigators, and those who are new to the field. Do you have a question to ask us or a story to tell? Well, don't worry. You have two ways to be heard. Call into the show and be on air live by dialing 661-244-9831. Press the number 1 to get your call in queue, or you can type your question in the chat room. Anthony and I will refer to them during the show. And if you're listening on the archives or on YouTube, well, then make sure you get here on Friday nights live. When you're not listening to us, you can check out our Facebook page and YouTube channel for some cool articles, videos, show highlights, and promotions. And if that's not enough, you can always drop us a line at paranormal.review@aol.com. Okay, kids, it's time for Paranormal Review Radio.
Well, typically this is the time when I do my intro for the show and I intro the guest. But we will not be doing that tonight. Why, Lucy?
Because we had a hell of a week. That's why.
That's one way of saying that we've had one hell of a week. Why don't you start off by telling our listeners who we were going to have on and how you came across finding this guest and what sort of intrigued you about finding this guest and all the innards of that, and then I'll talk about after what happened.
Okay. Well, basically, the subject of the show we wanted to talk about, we are talking about UFOs and the connections that Native Americans have had with, the legends and UFO sightings and all of that. So, doing my research, I came across a book, and the title of the book is what got me. The name of the book was 50 Shades of Alien Gray. Thought it was so cool. I was like, let's see if we can talk to this person. We got in contact with the author.
How did you come across the book? Was it just by searching Amazon or?
Searching Amazon. That's one of the first places that I usually go. I usually look for book titles, and I saw the title, and the title really did catch my eye. So, brought it to you. We said, okay, sure, let's reach out to this guy. And we did. And he agreed to come on. We started doing our research like we normally do. We dig into the book. We dig into the subject. And while we started digging into the subject, we came across some information that seemed vaguely familiar.
Well, earlier this week, after Lucy had confirmed the guest, the author of the book 50 Shades of Alien Gray, we do what we normally do. Lucy and I just, start to head out and do our research. Not only just on the topic itself, as we mentioned, it was going to be on Native Americans and the connection with aliens and UFOs, extraterrestrials, and all of that. There happens to be a lot of information in regards to the powerful legends within the Native American history and the tribes, especially within the Hopi tribes. I found a lot of information on Hopi tribes. And so as I was doing some of the research, typically what I do is if I find stuff online what I'll first do, instead of reading everything as it comes through, I'll bookmark them. And I'll hold them online, or I'll hold them on my bookmark on my internet, and I'll go back to them, maybe a second night or later on in the day, and then heavily go through all of them. And if I like any of the articles or any of the stories, I will either print them up or I will just copy and paste them and put them in a Word document so that I can cleanly research them and make little notes and then formulate questions from there, or formulate some research into developing more questions from there. And then I'll go and suggest those with Luci, and we can sort of formulate a dialogue with the guest at that point. And so I came across one of the websites, and I have it here marked, where is it? The website is called bibliotecapleiades.net, and they had some really good information on the Hopi tribes, and specifically they had interviews from folks within the UFO research community, and I heavily read this website because it had really good text. A lot of the articles that I read were very, very minimal and very general and basic. And this website had really good in-depth discussions and explanations to a lot of things. And one in particular area that I was really interested in was the section where it talked about Native Americans and how they believed in the constellations. And they talked about how America was called the Turtle Island, and that sort of intrigued me because I had never heard of that phrase before, that title before. And it just stuck in my head. And so then what I did was I went onto Amazon.com, and typically Amazon will allow you to read a book, read a little excerpt from the book that you're interested in. And so obviously we don't buy every single book that our guests or the guests that we have on, we don't buy every single one of them. Luci buys most of them. I'll buy some of them, and then we'll share the information together because otherwise we'll go broke by the end of the week. So what we did for this one was just read the little excerpt that we were allowed to read on Amazon.com. And as I got through probably the fourth or fifth paragraph, I'm reading the language in the text in this book, 50 Shades of Alien Gray, and I noticed, something seems very familiar, and it feels as though I have read this before. And I said, wait a minute, I know I've read this before. And again, it was talking about how Native Americans were fascinated with the constellations and about Turtle Island, and obviously that's not something that it typically is written about a lot, and so I just wanted to check and see because the wording of it seemed similar to me, and so I went back on bibliotecapleiades.net and I pulled up that section where I remembered it from, and I looked at it and I started to read it again. And I went back on Amazon.com, and I started to read the excerpt again from the book, and I went back and forth. And what I did was then pull up both texts side by side, and I saw the text exactly the same. Exactly the same. Word for word.
Word
for
word.
Word for word, and it was paragraph after paragraph. And I'm saying to myself, okay, wait a minute. Maybe the website stole it from him. And so I did a little research on the website. Now, the website has been on for, I don't even know how long, for years, probably even a decade, I think. And the book was only published in September, I believe, of this year, of 2014. Mm-hmm. And so that raised a question mark over my head. And I posed it to Luci, and I said, you know what, maybe it's just me. Maybe I may be going crazy. I said, Luci, is there something wrong? Is this true? And I forwarded her the information that I was gathering, and she looked at it, and what did you say?
It's word for word. It is exactly the same.
And I'm not saying that this book, the entire book, is, word for word from everything else. I mean, obviously, I don't know because I didn't read the entire book, but just that section of it, I can tell you, is truly word for word from the website. And so we thought about it, Lucy and I, and said, do we still have this guest on? Two things came over our minds, and we said, do we have the guest on and question him on air about this discovery, or do we give him the benefit of the doubt and question him about it beforehand? Because, again, we may be wrong. There may be something that we're not seeing. And so Lucy reached out to him and emailed him and said, listen, we found this information. Can you explain to us, what's going on, or what the deal is? And I'll let you take over from there if you want.
Well, we actually sent screenshots of both, the website and the excerpt from his book. And we asked, and what was his response? His response was that...
His response was, yes, that he sees that now, and that pretty much he had contributions from other folks that I don't know if he knew these people, that contributed some of the information to his book. And he neglected to do any background research on that information and just put it in his book. So pretty much blaming someone else for that information. Now, I don't know about you, but if I'm an author of a book and I'm putting my name on it, I'm going to double-check everything and make sure that everything is legit if I'm going to have somebody contributing to it, if that's the case. But this was his explanation for it. And we had told him before that, we're not sure whether or not we're going to have you on, but we'd like you to explain. So that was his explanation for it. So go ahead, Lucy.
And then so we talked about it. We decided that we were going to rescind the invitation. Send him an email, just very politely saying, we've decided that we're, going to rescind the invitation. Thank you very much. And his response to me was that he didn't have time for this bullshit. In addition
the bullshit
to that,
of what? That what we were pulling, or his own bullshit that he pretty much plagiarized a part of the book?
I believe it's the fact that we even questioned him about it.
Okay.
After that, I received a really lovely picture through message, which was... It was pretty much telling us to fuck off. So, with all that said, I mean, he really did prove to us that, this guy had some problems, had some issues. Now, one thing I want to mention that I found afterwards, I've been reading Andy Six-Killer Clark's book called Star People. It's stories of Native American encounters with aliens, UFOs. The introduction that Miss Clark had in the front of the book is almost exactly the same as the introduction that he has in his book. Almost exactly the same. So, is it a coincidence? I don't know. But just, we tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. We gave him a chance to explain. He just said that he got this from other people. But it was his behavior afterwards that just really sealed the deal for me. He was an ass, okay? I'm sorry. It just was, and I can't explain it. I'm at a loss for words. I mean, I've never received a response like that from anyone.
I mean, he could have... this could have happened where he received information and it was unbeknownst to him that it was pulled from a website or from some other text or context, and he shame on him, he did not do his research and he put it in the book, and that was the only piece of information that was copied from somewhere else, and everything else in his book could have been from his own words and from his own research, and very well could have been from him himself. And I'm not saying that his entire book is false. I'm just saying from what we were able to read on Amazon was false. But my dilemma is this: that to me it's almost like this may be a bad, sort of metaphor for it, but once an abuser, always an abuser. If you are sort of lying about this piece of information, what else could be in this book that you may be lying about, or what am I now to question in your future writings within this book that I've already found out this is a piece that has already been taken from someone else. Now, if I read further in your book, how do I know that to be true? And now we're talking about the paranormal, and here we are expecting to have you on as a guest to be talking about this information about Native Americans and the history. And he, obviously, from the hype that we had earlier in the week, that he had some explosive information in regards to government cover-ups and all this other stuff in his book. And in regards to some of the Native American witnesses that he had talked to and the information that they gave him, it was just a big question mark over how do I know that that's all true? And I don't feel comfortable enough bringing that person on and having you guys listen to him and take that information in as true when we've already found something that is not his work and it's not of his research. So I don't know what else he may have pulled from somewhere else and he claims it to be his, or may have, it just gets very muddy and very gray, and it just doesn't become, it's hard to believe once you come across this, and I could not fully well in my own conscience be able to put that person, and you as well, Luci. We could not have been able to put this person on air and have you listen to him and have you, sort of swallow everything that he's taking, that he's giving out, I mean,
we pride ourselves on the research that we do. I mean, even though, we'll have a guest on, we do additional research. We look at, we dig deep into the subject. And it's just, as Anthony says, we have no way of knowing if the whole book was plagiarized, but just the little bit that we found, to me, the answer wasn't satisfactory. And our reputation is on the line, bringing people to you to hear when we're not sure about it, and there's no way in my conscience that I could bring somebody like that on air. And, I agree with you totally, Anthony. It just, there's too many questions around the whole thing.
Chrisana Duran in chat is asking if there was any attribution to the actual borrowed material. No, there was no reference to it at all, because when we sent the information to him, his response was, yes, I see this now, meaning that it was only until we pointed it out to him that he noticed that this happened, and it was information that he was unaware of, because he explained it in the email to us. He was unaware of where this other person got this information from when he gave it to him. So he didn't even give any sort of recognition to the person that gave that contribution. He took it upon, he gave the credit to himself, basically. So he didn't even give the person who gave him that information the credit, let alone, the information coming from the website, the credit. So I hope that answers your question. So he didn't give any bibliography, anything to that. He did. There is a part in the book, and again, in that little excerpt that we can read, there is a section in there where he does give a reference and says, and the following text was taken from, I forgot where it was, and it says word for word. And so right then and there, he's actually stating something that he's taken from somewhere else, which was a quote, and he wanted to put a quote in the book. And obviously, when you put a quote in the book, you have to put some sort of reference to where you're getting it from. But so he does give credit to that, but this information he didn't have knowledge of before until we brought it to his attention.
So that was that. And then do you want to mention the other person that we tried to contact?
Well, so then, again, as we were doing the research, we found someone else that we wanted to have on. And, this is not big news or anything, but, we reached out to this person who he claims that his grandfather was one of the 6 children, and this is the first time I've ever heard the story. Apparently there were 6 Native American children who came upon the Roswell crash scene and took away a dying or close to dying alien and brought this alien back to health. and this alien spoke to these 6 children and told them about the constellations and the universe and their land and, of their people and everything else. Excuse me. And he never believed his grandfather until his grandfather was dying, and he finally then did some research and found out most of the story that his father told was true. And so I found it fascinating to have this gentleman on, and he's written books about it. He goes around the country talking to other Native American elders and other conventions, and so we wanted to have him on. Very nice gentleman in the very beginning, and all of a sudden, when was it, yesterday, he turns around and says, no, I'm sorry, what did he say?
So since he's not a featured speaker, that he was going to pass on the opportunity to talk with us.
Whatever that means. I have no idea what that means, but okay. To each their own. Everyone has their own level of diva-ness, so to each their own. And I'm not gonna bat an eyelash on that one. But so that's the story. That's how this whole thing happened, and that's the drama that went on this week. So unfortunately, we don't have a guest for tonight's show, but we did a lot of research. Obviously, we always do a lot of research. And so, Lucy and I have some information that we're going to discuss together and hopefully get you guys in the mix and, sort of discuss and learn a little bit about the Native Americans and how they've brought on such powerful oral history to the communications and the encounters with aliens and UFOs. I've always heard about these stories, and I've always known that there were these stories to be true. But you know what, Lucy? I was thinking just the other day about this question, and you being Native American, maybe I'll pose it to you. But, anybody can think about this question if you are interested in aliens and UFOs and all of that stuff. And you've always read these stories, and you've all watched, I'm sure, and probably listened to our show about ancient aliens, and how many cultures and societies and groups of people that have lived in ancient times, we seem to claim as though that they have developed these highly technological abilities and skills, and therefore the only conclusion that can be made is that some sort of intervention had happened, meaning some sort of UFO alien communication came down and encountered with these folks and passed on this information. And so they developed all this because it was almost as if it was overnight that they received these skills, these huge knowledge of things. So I was thinking about that and how Ancient Aliens, the show, talks about this, and other folks talk about this all the time, that whenever you have that intervention, that there's always this great, big, vast knowledge that comes over this group of people. If Native Americans did communicate with aliens, why do we not see in history that the Native Americans were so technologically advanced? Yes, I understand that their common ground and their common faith and spirituality is with the oneness with the land and with the air and with the animals and all of that. I understand that, but you would think that they would be a little bit more technologically advanced, since they've had so many encounters and so much communication with them, that the abilities would be there unless there was something that they refused to take on, as a means to develop their own tribe or to develop their own humanity. So I pose that question to you and to anybody else. If you can answer that, why don't we see any more technological advancement within the Native American culture then, if that is true?
Okay. First off, within a lot of the research that I did, there are several different beliefs that Native Americans have. Okay, one of the beliefs is that the star people, the UFOs, the visitors from other worlds came here, and they were very interested in the earth, the growth of plants, the atmosphere, the way things are. It seems like there's two strains of thought. There's the elders who truly believe that the people that came here, that the aliens that came here, that we're related to them, that Native Americans are related to the UFO people, to extraterrestrials. Then the younger generation is more along the lines they believe, what everybody else believes today. A lot of the stories that I found really point towards aliens being here a long time ago, but it wasn't like they presented the technology to us. It was more peaceful. It was nice. It was, they came here to survey the land, to see what Earth was about, and then also to kind of like warn us where we could go if we didn't take care of the Earth. And that's like the underlying theme that I'm seeing in a lot of these stories. It's not about technology. It's not about, advancing and cell phones and radio waves and all that. It's about the Earth. There is one thread that I've found in most of these stories, and it all relates back to the Earth. Taking care of the land, taking care of the water, keeping the air clean. That seems to be the main thing that my ancestors got from this.
Well, it does make sense because the idea of bringing technology into cultures, into humanity, seems to be the consensus within the Native American culture that it creates the demise of the world. It creates the unbalance of the world. And I know from my research with doing within, and mainly my research was within the Hopi Indians, and their main focus was, and their main purpose to life was to maintain balance on the Earth. Mm-hmm. And their whole strife in life was to create this balance so that we all can live in peace and harmony. And they are finding now, because of technology and because of the advancement, not so much technology, but the advancement of the world itself. It's the commercialization, the way that we travel, roads and guns and all of that stuff that has been created and developed and discovered, as Lucy pops open a can of Coke, as you can all hear right now. All of those advancements within the world that has been created is shifting that balance. And one of the elders, one of the pieces of information that I found was that because the Hopi Indians, basically, their clan is diminishing. I think I read somewhere where right now the Hopi only hold about 9% of their land, which mainly is within the Arizona area, and they only hold 9% of their land right now. And because of the younger generation right now within the Hopi culture, they are, they're running fast towards the city. They are becoming, businessmen, and they're getting away from tradition. That there are less and less Hopi Indians who are out there right now holding that balance. It's like there's not that many people holding the rope where they're able to keep things steady right now. And the Hopi basically are saying that's why we're seeing what we're seeing right now around the world is all this unstableness. So it kind of does make sense that the reason why they may not have wanted to take on that technology was because they could foresee the demise of the Earth, the demise of humanity, not so much that it creates it, but it sort of, it not warps our mind, but it changes our reality and our focus, where we need to be focusing on the spirituality of ourselves and of the land, and not of these man-made gadgets that are going to take our focus away from what truly matters in life. And by doing so, we create the chaos in the world, and we create that instability.
Well, okay. A lot of the stories, it's not saying that the Native Americans were pretty informed about the stars, constellations, and that. I mean, astronomy to them was they were pretty advanced in it. I mean, they had names for the constellations. They believed in all this. I mean, just the whole idea that the Earth, the center of the Earth, is the Great Turtle. And, you know, you've got all these constellations that they all have something to do with the star people. I mean, there are so many messages that I read that supposedly the aliens have brought to us, and they all center around where the Earth can go, where humanity is going to go. And one of the messages really does talk about the younger generation moving away from the old beliefs, moving away from that connection between the Earth and man. And one of the warnings that I've read is that we need to get back to that the native people need to embrace their culture. And that's not happening. I mean, you see the young ones. People are leaving the reservations. There's even some things in there about how when the white man came here, that everything changed. It was the beginning of the end. You've got all of these different stories that the elders, they tell. And they didn't write any of this stuff down. I mean, most of this is all oral history. It's stories passed down from generation to generation. And as you have the younger people kind of turning away from the old beliefs, you're losing that. So a lot of these stories, a lot of these encounters, a lot of these beliefs are going by the wayside. Is it a good thing? I don't think so. I mean, the basic message that the aliens had brought to my ancestors was one, really, of being one with the earth, of taking care of what you have. They came here to find, you know, what life is. I mean, and one thing I found interesting is that the elders, they do believe that we're not the only ones in this universe, that there are other planets, there are other worlds, there's other civilizations. We're just one of millions and millions of other civilizations. But it's not a matter of, you know, trying to conquer anybody. It's not a matter of trying to take from somebody else. It's living within your own world, and it's prospering. It's taking care of what you have and believing in yourself, believing in the earth, believing in the gifts that we have.
Well, you know, I've been talking about Hopi Indians, and so I probably will be talking about it during the course of the show. So I just wanted to, I did a little bit of a little synopsis of the Hopi Indians, just to give everybody some basic knowledge when I talk about Hopi Indians, because I thought this was pretty interesting, and also to give you an idea of, you know, how the Hopis, you know, how they, you know, came to be, and how they came to go, pretty much, you know, what really happened. So Hopi means peaceful ones, and that is actually the essence of their existence, peaceful ones. As I was talking before, their main purpose was to create the balance on Earth, in this world. That's what their main purpose was to do. That's what they believed, was to create this balance and to negate all of the chaos. They migrated from Mexico around 500 BC, and when you talk about Hopi Indians, it's not just one tribe. I've learned that Hopi Indians are a mass of all different clans and bands. So, and they've lived all over the Four Corners. It's not just one area, but their main migration land, or their homeland, as you would call it, is in Arizona. And what's interesting about this tribe, and you don't hear this that much, the Hopi society was matrilineal, which means that women determined the inheritance and the social status and the people. And when a man marries, the children from the relationship are members of the wife's clan. So the women are pretty much put up on a pedestal. They are the king. They are the hierarchy within this tribe. And so that I found to be very interesting, because you don't hear that, not so much amongst Native Americans, but within all cultures and with all societies. Women are usually put down. Even in Catholicism, women are usually put down a lot. So it's interesting to hear that the Hopi Indians had sort of raised the women level higher than men. Spaniards
Can
invaded
I add something to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, that holds true for a lot of native tribes. In the Cherokee, which I am, I'm Eastern Band Cherokee. The mother she's the one that runs everything. I mean, it's the matriarch. So what you were saying about, when a woman takes a man, her children will become part of the mother's tribe, the mother's clan. So I mean that runs across a lot of native tribes.
Right. So the Spaniards invaded, as you all have probably heard in history class, Spaniards invaded the Hopi territory in 1540. And they weren't met with friendliness. They weren't in the very beginning very all smiles and happy and cheery and, the whole Thanksgiving type of ceremony. But they did sort of get along. There was some bartering, there was trading, there was communication going on. And over the next sort of 50 years, the Spaniards slowly increased their population. They would come over the seas and increase the population in the area, mainly around Arizona, and began to try to convert the Hopi Indians to Catholicism. Basically, as they grew, they sort of outnumbered the Hopi Indians in the area and said, well, we're here. We're going to do this type of thinking, this type of worshiping, and if you were going to be in this land and in this area amongst us, this is what we expect you to do as well. I've read that they've cut children's hair and they made them attend school, sort of giving them the strict regimen and not allowing them to learn or continue learning their own culture. They wanted them to learn school, which, it's sort of kind of a 50-50 thing. It's sort of good and bad, but I can see the trend and where it was going, and I can see how it sort of diminished the Native American Hopi tribe, their culture and their society. It's sort of negating what they learned before was bad, and what they need to learn is what is necessary for them to live. Slowly, the Hopi land was taken away, and due to the exposure from chickenpox from the Spaniards, the Hopi tribe went from thousands to only a couple of hundred. And as I mentioned before, currently right now, the Hopi only hold about 9% of their original land. And so that's why I think right now a lot of the Hopi Indian tribe members and the elders are talking more, because typically within the Hopi tribe, many of the oral history that has come down from millennia was never communicated. They always held all of these ancient, secrets, all of these revelations that they've had, either of future cataclysms or of future hopes. Whatever it may be, they've held on to these visions and these scenes and these words of wisdom. They've held on to them because they felt as though if they communicated these to the white man, that there would be genocide, that they would be killed completely. So they held on to all of this information, but they see that there's an imbalance occurring. They see that their tribes are diminishing, and so this is almost sort of like a cry out for help. Okay, well, we're going down, so now we're going to go down and let everybody know why we're going down, and here's what you guys are going to see in the next future, why we have always been true and why you should have been listening to us all along. And so there have been many conventions since I think the earlier mid-'90s that I've read, and one of which I'm going to talk about tonight if I get a chance to, that was really interesting, and they had all of these elders from all over America, but also all over the world, and even Whitley Strieber, who I love Whitley Strieber. If you're not familiar with him, go get his books. There was this convention in 1996 where they had all these elders come and talk about these alien encounters and talk about all these races of extraterrestrials and what they said and how they encountered them, and the stories of the constellations and of their planets. And all of this knowledge and information, it was almost as if they put everything out on the line for people to hear, and yet where is it on the news? Where is it for people to gather that information? Where is anybody listening to it? No one, unless you really dig deep. So it's really saddened me when I was doing this research, but I'm glad I did, because I got a lot of their knowledge and a lot of their information here with me in the 25 pages that I printed up. So, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to do this show, was to share some of this knowledge with everybody. And I can probably post where I got some of this information so that you guys can read more about it. But the Hopi Indians are a really interesting tribe, and it's almost enlightening to know that I live on a planet with a group like this that believe in something so wholeheartedly that they are desperately trying to save the world, almost, with only 9% of their clan.
Well, okay. I agree with what you're saying. I have a little bit different information on with that. First off, a lot of this information isn't out there because it's always been known within the Native American community. People talk about it, but they don't talk to outsiders about it. In order to talk to someone, and Miss Clark goes into this in her book, you have to either be introduced or you have to know somebody. They don't freely share the information. The connections that the elders have made with the Star people, they happened a long time ago. One of the things, and they left pretty much at the time that the white man came here. One of the prophecies does state that they would return.
In your research, did you read that Star people actually are our ancestors, basically, that they're the ones that actually sort of implanted us here on Earth?
Not so much implanted us. When they came here, there are stories of aliens that mated with human females, and that genetically the belief is there that a lot of the Native Americans were descended from them. Elders believe that every single one of the tribes in this country is directly descended from some alien form. Each tribe is different, from a different one. They do believe that they came here. They didn't put us here, but they did teach us. They did give us visions of the future. They also married and had children. So genetically, they do, the belief is there that Native Americans are descended from Star people, that were descended from extraterrestrials. One of the things that I found really, really interesting was there is an elder called Wallace Black Elk. He's from Lakota. He's a Lakota. He's a spiritual leader of the Oglala Sioux, and he wrote a book, and it's called Black Elk Speaks. He actually stated that he kind of met with the Chris he did talk about UFOs a lot. He has had visions, and those visions were given to him from the aliens. He considered himself the spiritual representative of Earth and all of mankind. One of the things that I really, really found interesting, he believed that the Star people came to Earth hundreds of years ago from Cyrus and the Pleiades, and he called them the ancestors of our people. A lot of the elders believe the same thing, that we're related. They also believe that they're going to come back and they're going to take us somewhere, to another planet where everything is going to be nice and where everything's going to be the way it is, kind of like a rapture type of thing. Now,
it's almost
these
like
are the stories that are there.
Scientology belief, isn't it?
Kind of, but I don't know. When I'm reading this, when I'm doing the research, it didn't strike me in the same way that the Scientology beliefs did. It just seemed more real. I mean, these are elders. I have a tendency, being Native American, when I read what the elders say, I have more of a tendency to believe it only because those are my people. You know, and I know some of it sounds fantastic and it sounds, you know, crazy to a point. But Black Elk was very, very respected. I mean, he talks about the Star People are going to take the Indians to another world. There are stories of Native Americans now, modern day, that have been abducted. They have been in contact. But these stories are not, you know, when you listen to like the Betty and Barney Hill story, there's kind of a sense of fear. There's a sense of, you know, this is evil and this is, you know, it's dangerous. The stories that I read, the things that I found, there's a sense of like acceptance and the sense of peacefulness to it. I can't explain it. It just seems very, very natural. So
well, then
Black Elk.
The question then is, because of what you said, that the Star People are descendants of Native Americans, I'm assuming that these Star People are not descendants of white people then, or of any non-Native Americans.
Not according to Black Elk. Not according to a lot of the ancestors.
Okay, so then what I can gather then from it, because of just my lack of knowledge of anything else on the subject, would be that are these aliens then inspecting the white people and utilizing, it's sort of like we're the lab rats and the Native Americans are the white doctors. And so therefore we are on a lower class level, and so we are being treated as though we are the lab rat, where we can be tested, we can be discarded, and so for the benefit of when Native Americans are taken away, that somehow that knowledge that they are gathering, these Star People, are going to be utilized for when this happens, this rapture, you know.
There's no, you know what, I didn't come across anything that talked about what's going to happen afterwards. I'm assuming that, yes, you know, if they take us, then it means that the planet is going to fall into whatever path it's on. And obviously it's not on a good path. There are supposed to be 3 signs that are going to happen before they come back again. One of them is the appearance of the white buffalo, which has happened. It happened in the last couple of years that there was a white buffalo born. These are prophecies that the ancestors, that the elders have. Now, I didn't come across anything that explained what's going to happen to everybody else. I mean, one question that was posed to how will they take all of us? There's like over 2 million scattered all over the planet of Native American descent. And the answer that was given is that the Star People know every Indian on Mother Earth. They know where they live, regardless of what tribe. They will not leave anyone behind who is ready and willing to go. So I think that right there, that statement there is, I'm assuming that there would be Native Americans that are going to be left behind if they don't believe. And one of the other prophecies that talks about is that the young ones, the younger generation, they don't believe. And one of the jobs that the elders have is to bring those young ones back into the belief.
Why does this sound so familiar to, you know, what's going on with religion in the world today, with Catholicism? Oh, well, if you don't believe, got to be saved. It's the same thing.
It is the same thing. Basically, it is a religious belief.
It just seems like it's a broken record. It just seems as though, you know, I don't know. It's just hard for me to believe because I'm seeing so many of these correlations between what you've just said and what Catholicism has done before, and what the Bible states. If you don't believe, you're going to hell, pretty much. That seems to be what this story is about, that if you are not a believer within the Star People and of the descendants that you truly are, well, then you're not going to be saved.
Pretty much that's basically what it is saying. And again, we see that religion, the religious beliefs, the spiritual beliefs, is what's guiding or what's controlling the way that we live as human beings. You're giving me that look.
I don't know. This is now starting to turn me in a different direction a little bit. But go ahead. I mean, it's still fascinating and exciting to learn all of this, because as I was reading it too, I as well learned that all of Native Americans are descendants from Star People, and a lot of the elders, and as I was talking about before about this convention, which, excuse me, but I know I have it written down here. It was the Star Knowledge Conference in Sundance in 1996. That was the conference. And there was all of these elders had come together, and they had talked about, these orange Star People and these white, long, tall Star People, these women Star People, all these different races and colors of all these Star People, and how they're all related and are descendants of the Native Americans. I did learn all of that, but it wasn't until you were talking about it that I'm like, well, wait a minute, is it just Native Americans, and are we a part of it? I want to even go further than that. I mean, if that's the case, then where is this? What? At what point was there the separation between Native Americans, white people, black people, Asian people? Where is that point then?
Well, the only way that I can explain it is that these are the beliefs of the Native Americans, okay? This is what we believe. This is what this particular group of people believe. Now, in the bigger picture, does it apply to everyone else? No, not really. But each individual, what I'm getting from all of this is that each individual race or each individual group of people have their beliefs. I mean, when you talk about the religious beliefs of different cultures, they all have their own particular belief. It just so happens that for the Native American belief, everything, all of these words, Black Elk's words are particular for Native Americans. But I was reading, that same conference, about the same conference you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the messages that the elders gave from different tribes, they transcend all races. They transcend the whole human race. So in one particular, we've got Black Elk here who's saying that it's the Native Americans that are going to go with the Star People. But when you talk to other elders, when you read the words of other elders, they seem to encompass all of mankind. They seem to encompass all races. It's not just one.
At this conference as well, Standing Elk, who is Lakota keeper of the six-pointed Star Nation altar, had talked about that he said that Jesus was a star man, and Standing Elk noted that the 11 symbols found on the wreckage of the Roswell UFO crash each had two meanings, a universal law and a spiritual law. During a subsequent presentation, he presented interpretations of these various star visitor symbols which he had received from star people who manifested during sweat lodge ceremonies. So I thought that was interesting that he brought that up, that, he's saying that Jesus was a starman. Obviously, he's acknowledging Jesus as a man, so I don't know. I'm sort of a little confused. Again, and everybody who's listening, please forgive me and my lack of knowledge on this. Like I said before, we were expected to have a guest on, and I had a bunch of questions that I wanted to get answered so that I can get knowledgeable of this. So this is sort of, in the works. This is me, building my brain cells as we talk about this. So you're going to hear me, maybe be confused or may not make sense. So please forgive me on that, or may make mistakes. So please forgive me on that. But what was one of the pieces? Go ahead.
If you go to the next paragraph, the Oglala spiritual leader and advisor Floyd Hand, he continues that religious theme.
Yeah.
He talks about the religious leaders that are star people, and of course it mentions Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, and White Buffalo Calf Woman. These are all supposedly star people, that they are from 7 different galaxies. They're all representative on Earth, and each Native American tribe has its ET race of origin.
Origin, for those who cannot decipher what Lucy just said. But Standing Elk also had mentioned, and I had just mentioned this before, that the Lakota and Dakota medicine men are now being instructed to share spiritual knowledge of the star nations because of the contamination of Mother Earth and the pollution of the air. They're being forced to talk about it, like I was saying before, that it's sort of like the ship is going down and they are in need, and they are being forced to tell the world and to tell everyone, Native Americans and non-Native Americans, of their knowledge, of all of the visions, of everything that they have learned, and all of the history and oral history that they have learned about, that they feel the need that they must communicate this so that everybody understands what is happening and what they need to do in order to correct it all.
Well, they're the 4 omens, okay? And Floyd talks about them. The first one, like I mentioned, was the birth of the white buffalo calf. The second omen was the birth of another white buffalo calf to a Sioux rancher. The third omen is another white calf. And the fourth omen will be the star people coming and visiting Santa Fe, New Mexico. He's urging people to get away from urban hubbub and sharpen their senses. Start putting in a garden. Start putting away food. It's going to be hard. There will be a new government. And Floyd actually sees the end of the current world on January 21st, 2021.
Yeah, I read that about 2021. And, I read also, too, somewhere else about, because there's a whole, it's somewhere online, I think it's on, like, Wikipedia or somewhere, where there's a whole list of everybody's prophecy about the end of the world, from the beginning of time up until I think it's like 5 billion, AD, when, the star just ceases to exist or whatever. So, and I remember seeing January 2021, I think, was I think the next one in line for a for the next sort of cataclysm, the next end of the world. I thought that was interesting. But have you ever heard of White Feather?
Yes.
He's of the Hopi tribe, and I've heard this before, but not in great detail. And so when I read this, it really was interesting to learn more about it in greater detail. But the Hopi had prophecies about the end of the world, and there was these predictions that they had to learn when the end of the fourth. Is it the fourth?
The fourth omen.
No. Is it the fourth world?
Oh.
Where is it? Excuse me for a second. I don't remember if it was the end of the third world, the beginning of the fourth, or the end of the fourth, beginning of the fifth. In either case, there are these 9 signs that the White Feather has stated that has always been within the oral history of the Hopi Indians. and has been passed on for many, many years. And this was told in 1958 to a gentleman named David Young, who was driving across the country. And he had spoken to White Feather pretty much on the side of the road. And he revealed to David Young these 9 signs. And I thought these were really interesting, the way that they were worded and the way that they were interpreted. And if you don't mind, I just wanted to go through these 9 signs. The first one is, I don't think these are in succession, so it's not a matter of whether or not this comes first or second or third, but except for the last one, which we know has not happened yet, and that will be the last before the end of this world will come and the new world will begin. So the first one is, the white-skinned people will take possession of the land and carry thunder sticks that strike like lightning. And so when you hear that, it's sort of like thunder sticks that strike like lightning. What could you think it would be? Rifles, pistols, guns.
Mm-hmm.
Spinning wheels with voices in them would come. Now, this was interpreted as either it was wagon wheels or car tires. Also, people interpreted this as records and CDs. Spinning wheels with voices that would come. The third one is, huge, strange beasts would appear looking somewhat like buffalo with long horns. And this is cattle. Cattle that the Hopi Indians had never seen cattle before. Snakes of iron would spread across the land. I thought this was really interesting. Snakes of iron. So just
trains.
There you go. Railroads. That's what it would be. So snakes of train. I thought that was really, really interesting. A giant spider web would crisscross the land.
The internet.
Well, they've talked about this being sort of the telegraph, the telephone, the power lines that would run across the land, and then ultimately it's the World Wide Web. They're talking about it now as being this web. The next one is, rivers of stone that make pictures in the sun would crisscross the Hopi land, and the Hopi land is Arizona. This ultimately means concrete highways in the desert with their mirage of the water. I thought that was really, really interesting. This next one is, the ocean would turn black and all the living things in it would die. And people made reference to the summer of 2010 when we had the Gulf oil spill. This was funny. This is the eighth one. Young people with long hair would come to the Hopi land to learn native ways. And this talks about the counterculture revolution of the late 1960s and the early 70s, the hippies, basically. And the ninth one is, a dwelling place in the heavens would crash to Earth, thereby producing a brilliant blue star. And I've heard about this blue star, the Sakwasohu. The blue star Kachina would remove his mask in the village plaza during a sacred Kachina dance. After that, all Hopi ceremonies would cease entirely. And they've talked about this blue star coming to Earth. Many people have talked about this being a comet. And when a comet enters into the atmosphere of the Earth, there's this blue glow before the trail, that white trail that comes through. People have talked about the blue star as being the planet Nibiru that is supposedly out there and that may be crashing into planet Earth. The blue star, they've also talked about asteroids. And so it's really interesting that this here is the 9 sort of signs that the end of the world is coming, and this is from the Hopi Indians. I don't know if you can take any of these to be true or factual or not. These were made, I don't know when they actually were created, but White Feather stated these in 1958. And again, like we mentioned before, the Hopi Indians were very tight-lipped about things, especially to non-Native Americans. And so I don't know if there's any information out there. I'm sure there probably is. I just have not found it. But I'm sure there's information out there when these signs were first adopted and first created. And so that could give you a better idea or a better mindset as to when they were written, how could they even think of these things to be understood if it was so long ago in ancient times?
Well, a lot of my research revolved around Cherokee, being Cherokee. And it's always like, the main thing that I'm getting from all of this even with the signs and all the prophecies and stuff like that, it's that the belief in UFOs, the belief in the extraterrestrial life has always been there. You know, I'm getting that the aliens were teachers, you know, and the elders took that. Now that it's getting to the time where we're getting ready to go into that fifth world, now's the time to spread that knowledge to everyone and have them take heed. Now, whether or not these prophecies, you know, if you believe them or not, I mean, they do truly mean something to the people that are presenting them. This is their belief. This is the information that they've been given, and their responsibility is to share that with the world. It's always been within the culture, but it hasn't been shared with anybody. So now's the time for all of this information to come out.
You know, it's interesting also, too, because, you know, the whole thing with the Mayan calendar in 2012 and the end of the world and all of that stuff, and the idea with the Mayan calendar and the end of the world was that it wasn't that it was going to be the end of the world. It was going to be a shift. It was going to be a change in the world. It was going to be some sort of wedge that would happen. Either it was going to be good or bad, and time would end, but then time would begin again. And here we have people have all known about Nostradamus and his predictions and his prophecies, and how he talked about that there would be this great cataclysm and an end to the world, but then there would be, you know, 100 years afterwards of this great peacefulness and this great land that we would all be living in, where there would not be any negative actions, there would not be any chaos, any killing, any famine, any of that stuff. And the Hopi Indians, and I'm sure within many of the tribes and other predictions within Native Americans, they're all saying the same thing as well, that it's not that it's a matter of that the world is ending, it's that there is this shift. And you find that within science as well, but within a lot of these spiritual talks, that everything is cyclical. And it seems as though that time itself is cyclical. And you repeat many, many things over a course of many, many years. And it's not a matter of, you know, you're just reliving life over and over again. It's that the energies of the world and of the universe are turning. And obviously the energies are then going to come around again at that point, and the same energies are there and are reflected back upon whatever it is reflecting upon, either it's humanity or if it's land or whatever. It's then our reactions to that shift of energy or that energy reflection will then make a change in that particular time frame itself. So you will see obviously things that we may have done sort of similar maybe 500 years ago, and, you know, sort of the mind frame of some people may be similar, but the actions and how we go about things may be a little bit different or maybe completely different. But I think there are things that are still cyclical. There are things that we still do almost similar to what the ancient Native Americans did, you know, a millennia ago. And so I do take some credence into a lot of this, and it's not that I singularly take what the Hopi are saying, but I've taken what Nostradamus, what Edgar Cayce has said, what you know, what the Mayans have talked about, and all of that, and I sort of lay it out there on the desk. And again, I try and sort of you know, connect the dots, and I try and map them all together to see if there's some sort of link to it all, to try and make some sort of sense of it. And it kind of does. I don't know, to me it does, in a way.
Well, the Native American belief is that everything, it's a circle. Life is a circle. When you're talking about cycles, yes, that's exactly what it is. I mean, life doesn't go in a straight line. It is a series of circles.
It's like the Lion King, circle of life.
And yet, well, you move on to the next circle. I mean, that's basically what it is. They're all cycles. So we're just simply moving in to the next cycle. I mean, everything doesn't have to go in a straight line. I mean, I think maybe we look at it, it's like, okay, we start here, we start the race here, and we're going to end up here. But what happens when you get to the end of that course? That's it? No, you start the next one. You start the next cycle. So a lot of what they're bringing forth, a lot of what the elders are talking about, I truly believe it's just another phase of our learning as human beings, as beings of this universe. I think it's just another cycle that we're going into, and this happens to be the cycle of knowledge, the cycle of enlightenment. One of the things that I read talked about the age of Aquarius. Basically,
right.
Age of Aquarius, knowledge, coming back to learning to things. This is what this is. I mean, the elders speaking up is bringing that knowledge forth. It's time.
But, I did read a lot of stories of Native Americans, and you do hear this a lot. Not so much, well, yes, within Native American culture, but within a lot of other cultures as well. I've heard many people talk about going to specific societies within Africa as well, where there's a lot of medicinal herbs that are used. And there is this, the use of these medicinal herbs are created for a spiritual connection and spiritual enlightenment. And the cause and effect of these herbs when they're used create visions, create scenarios that are not there. And so you have to take that into consideration as well when you're talking about an ancient civilization or ancient times, when obviously knowledge that we have now was not knowledge that they had back then with certain things. And so, if you pull those leaves off and, ground them down and smoke them or drank them or whatever, and things happened, therefore they felt as though that was reality, and spread that word to the other tribesmen as though it really did happen. So you have to sort of take things with a little bit of a grain of salt sometimes, and a little bit of a filter. That's my thing, and again, that's my skeptical side of things, and you have to understand
You're
that that's
saying that
out
they
there.
Were just high.
Well, things happen. It's all over. That's with a lot of different cultures. And so, is it out there? Have cultures done that? Yes. So can you say that all of the words and all of the history that Native Americans are talking about, was that done outside of any of those actions? I don't know. So therefore, can you truly say that any of that is true? And I'm not saying it to be mean or to be whatever, but it is a fact of life. And so therefore, you have to take that into consideration, whether or not to believe these stories or not. And therefore, try and keep that within your mind and not push that aside and think, okay, forget it. I'm going to believe every word that they say.
Chris just brought up a good point, okay? How could they have described a shotgun or a car any better? How do you hallucinate something when you have no frame of reference?
No, true. That's right. And I'm not saying, that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying everything that they talked about is under the influence. I'm just saying that, was it that these visions and these communications and these encounters with aliens, were they in fact real, or were they created while under, these ceremonies that they were done? Because I had read a lot of stories where there were these underground ceremonies. They would go underground in these caves and actually have ceremonies, and that's where they said, and I'm doing these air quotes right now, that's where they said that they would communicate with these aliens and these extraterrestrials. So what were they doing in these underground ceremonies in these caves? Were they grinding up in a mortar and pestle these herbs and drinking these teas that could have altered their states of mind? And so, I don't know. I'm just saying take that into consideration. I'm not saying that everything that they're saying right now is false, but I'm just saying that could be a possibility to some of these oral history segments.
I agree with you there, to some of them, but there's a lot of legends and their stories, and one of the ones that I found is the Cherokee one. The source was Myths of the Cherokee, and it's U.S. government printing office. It was printed around 1900, and there's a story in there about a young warrior who comes in contact with two females. The tribe was, gathering. Two women appeared, long, beautiful hair. The warrior falls in love with one of them, and he wants to dance with her, and he falls instantly in love with her. He wants to marry her. She has a sister. It's her and her sister. He follows them. They invite him to come to their home. They don't know where these two women came from. They don't know where their home was. He follows, and he goes. When he gets to their home, he passes through a big body of water, and he was very, very scared. He did not want to step on it. He overcomes his fear. He walks there. When he gets into what he calls the cave, which is their home, which sounds amazingly, the description sounds like a UFO. It is a big, smooth area that's gray. Sounds like metal. Both of the sisters take their hair off and hang them on a rock. The description that's given in this story is that both of them, their head was smooth like a pumpkin. They said, okay, he's starting to freak out. He's starting to get all scared and everything like that. The sisters tell him that my brother is coming. You'll have to talk to him. In the distance, you hear thunder. He's hearing thunder. The one sister says, oh, that's my brother. He's coming. When the brother shows up, they offer the warrior a seat, and he describes the seat as when you sat on it, it kind of just molded to your body. He's totally afraid. The legend goes on to say that, the brother comes and he says, okay, you need to come with us and you can marry my sister. The warrior is scared. He's like, I'm not going to do this. I can't do this. This is something evil. I don't want to do this. He runs from the area. He refuses to sit on the chair. He goes back to the tribe. Comes back the next night. Nothing is there. Everything is gone. Okay? The legend, the way the story goes, these were two aliens. These were aliens that came down. It's a story that's been told within the tribe. I mean, it's accepted as fact. I mean, I find it hard to believe that the warrior was high. You know what I mean? The mind-altering substances, it wasn't shared with the whole tribe. I mean, usually it was the medicine man or the shaman that took part in the mind-altering substance, and it was believed that he got clarity from that. It wasn't hallucination. It wasn't, the visions that he got was clarity. It was getting the truth. That's what the belief is with the mind-altering substance, and the whole tribe didn't take part in it. It was usually the medicine man or the shaman.
I don't know. I mean, to me, it could be here. Okay, here's the debate on that story. Then, what if these two guys were, walking somewhere and plucked some mushrooms out of the ground and ate them?
Well, you're talking about, this is Eastern Band Cherokee, okay? This is in North Carolina. Hallucinogenic mushrooms aren't really, I don't know of any hallucinogenic mushrooms that are in the area. I don't know of any frogs you can lick and then all of a sudden get, You know what I'm saying? I mean, I know you're looking at it from the skeptic's point of view. I'm looking at it from, this is the legends of my people. I believe it.
I'm just saying, here's the thing. You know, I was brought up Catholic. I don't believe in the Bible. I wasn't there. Mm-hmm. And many of the things that I'm finding out it's just, it's hard for me to believe in some of the stories. There's a lot of things that I'm finding out, and that's my dilemma at this point and stage in my life, where I'm just not finding things that are acceptable to me. And so I understand, you know, you are Native American and these are the stories of your peoples, but does that mean that you have to believe them because you are a Native American?
I don't have to believe them, but there's something within me, something within my DNA or something, I can't explain it. It just seems, it's, you know, everything that I've read, everything that I'm learning, it just seems real to me. It really does, and I can't explain that.
Hey, if there's one proponent for UFOs, the existence of UFOs and extraterrestrials, it is me. I will be the first one in line to say, hell yes, I do believe that they exist. I'm not saying that, you know, for the point of argument that there is no such thing, and therefore then I don't believe these Native Americans and their stories. I'm just saying that there's another side to things that, you know, you should consider as well, that there may be a possibility. Mm-hmm. I could be completely wrong. And all of these stories are true, and yes, there's a time and place for the medicine man and what happens in those caves, and then there's a time and place for these actions and these encounters with extraterrestrials.
And Ko just put in the chat room, yeah, there's a lot of hallucinogenic substances everywhere. But yeah. Krista also mentioned before that warriors usually weren't the ones that were imbibing them. He was a warrior. Warriors don't usually do that. They're usually not the trippy ones. It's usually the medicine man or the shaman.
Was there anything that in your research that you found interesting that you may not have known before?
I'm really amazed by all of the reports of contact now, currently, that people have, and they accept it. It's almost like it's not sensationalized. There are a lot of stories, not only Cherokee, but it seems like a lot in the Plain States, where people have had contact. They've seen UFOs, and the communication that happens between the humans and the aliens, so much was written about telepathic communication, that, you know, all of these things that they're getting where they weren't spoken. It was like they knew. So from the skeptic side, yes, you can say, okay, is this someone imagining these things? But there's a lot of stories now. There are a lot of stories currently of people that have made contact, that they're talking. The aliens are here. They come back. That they've made contact with people, and a lot of this is all telepathic. But a lot of the stories that I've read about contact with aliens, they all seem to be peaceful. There's very few instances where there's a sense of like fear. There's a sense of dread. Most of the stories that I've read are all peaceful. That's one thing that really surprised me.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned telepathic, and that's what was one of the things that interested me when I was doing the research. And I wanted to quote again this elder Standing Elk. And when he was talking at this conference back in 1996, he spoke of the star visitors communicating telepathically with Indians, and that the original spiritual language of the Sioux is a language of few cryptic keywords designed to stimulate and be supplemented by full additional telepathic communication. The same star people who visit the Sioux also visit the Hopi Indians. He said that the star people and the Indians have the same DNA. Standing Oak noted that there is big news coming, fast changes, but they are slow in arriving. So it was interesting that he's stating that the spiritual language of the Sioux is basically almost a telepathic language, and that this was communicated, or I don't know if it was a learned language, from the star visitors, and that there's very few cryptic words that are meant to be a stimulant, and it's supplemented to be an additional telepathic communication. So I thought that was really interesting.
You know what? One thing that I thought about, like whenever I talk about, like, I'm Native American to people, and I'm a tarot card reader, and I've got like abilities. Someone always makes a comment, it's because you're Native. Okay, well, what does that have to do with anything? But now that I'm reading these stories, that if there is some kind of UFO alien DNA in there, could this be a part of it? Could it be the ability to pick up on things, to just maybe be more psychically aware? Could that be a possibility? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I that's something that popped up in my head. It's like, okay, why is it that I have this ability? I mean, I know there's people all around the world. I mean, everyone has the ability, I believe, but it just seems like, for me, it was just so easy. It was just so natural that it happened. Now I'm reading all these stories about, that we've got alien DNA. That explains a lot. I mean, but I don't know. This whole subject is like so huge. There's so many little things that are popping up. I guess maybe the acceptance of it is what really kind of surprises me. It just seems like Native Americans have more of an acceptance of it. It's not like I said, it's not the sensational. It's not the fear. It's not the big bad aliens coming to get us. It's more like the aliens were here to help us, to teach us, to guide us, and they took off and they're coming back. That's what I'm getting from everything that I've read.
Some of the evidence, too, and we posted it on our Facebook page for Paranormal Review Radio, some of the cave drawings that were done were pretty amazing, almost accurate to some of the drawings that people are doing in modern day right now to encounters and sightings of aliens and extraterrestrials, with the big black eyes and the big heads. I mean, if you go to our Facebook page, you can see one of the cave drawings. There's literally like at least over 24 of these drawings of these alien heads on there that are, to me, there's no question that they're not human. They're not animal. They don't seem to be, made up spiritual. They seem to be alien and extraterrestrial in nature, just from the knowledge that we have today and what many witnesses are talking about today, what they look like, what these aliens and what commonly people call as grays, what these grays look like. I mean, to me, if that's not evidence enough, then, okay, they're not hallucinating with these medicinal herbs in the caves. I get it, yes. These are true. Whoever drew those, and whenever that was drawn on those cave walls or the cave ceilings, I think it's on the ceiling, I have to believe that. I can't deny that at all.
Well, we've touched on that, when we've talked about ancient aliens. This isn't just Native American. I mean, you've got evidence, in Egypt. There's hieroglyphics that show, what could only be described as a spaceship. So I truly believe that they've been here. I mean, I don't think it's just simply exclusive to the Native Americans. It's just that the Native Americans have their own stories to go with it. But there's evidence all around the world that somebody's been here. I mean, where do all these drawings come from? Where does that idea come from? Like Krista mentioned before, how do you come up with something when you don't have a basis of reference. You just, out of the blue, just like, okay, you know what, I'm seeing this person with big, giant green eyes. The Cherokee have a story of the little people. And what they believe is when they got here, when the Cherokee first came here, that there are the little people, moon people, they're blue. They live underground. They found the area and it was being farmed and it was beautiful and there was plants growing and everything. And the little people come out at night, they farm the land, they take what they need, and they live underground. This is one of the stories that the Cherokee have. They're blue. They're not from this world. They don't know how they got here. They don't know why they were here, but they weren't mean, or they didn't threaten the Cherokee, but they didn't want to interact with them either. It was kind of like, okay, well, you're there, I'm here, you stay on your side, I'll stay on my side. That's one of the legends that I found, that these aliens lived underground, that they farmed the land, and they would only come out at night. Fantastic story? Yeah, it is. But I still find it hard to believe that people just made this stuff up without having some kind of basis. I mean,
I don't know.
Lying about something like that just isn't.
I'm not saying lying.
No, that's the wrong word. Creating a story like that. Every parent has told your child the story about, if you don't behave, the boogeyman's going to get you. I don't think this is like the same thing. I don't think it's...
No, but, just like within the Bible itself, there's all these fables that are written, or these oral codes that are spoken about that, you're not meant to take literally, you're meant to take figuratively, and it's supposed to be a higher meaning than actually these, little blue people coming out and farming the land. Maybe there was another meaning to that story, but, people are taking it as a literal story. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I could be completely wrong, but one of the things that I did want to say was that I am, and I say this humbly, that I am truly in awe of the strength of the Native American culture and how, I'm trying to think of the right word to say, in how, if all of this is true and all of these stories and encounters have happened, I am in complete awe of the strength that the Native American Indians had to hold all of this information and not go buck wild and run to every single person that they saw to tell. How, I see so many people, if they hear, Joe just got fired yesterday. In 2 minutes, that news is spread amongst 50,000 people, either in social media or whatever. It's just that information spreads so fast. People love to be the first person to tell their story. And there's so many people now that they want to write a book about their story, or put it in a blog or whatever it is. They so desperately want to give out that information. But I'm in awe of the strength that they had to hold on to that information and not tell anyone but their own people, and to not let any of that out at all for so many years, and the feeling that they needed to say it now, I don't know, it just goes to show of my fascination with the Native American culture and with their history. It just, I don't know, doing paranormal and going to the investigations, doing all of that, I've had a greater appreciation for a lot of the history within Native America. And, as we've said before, November is National Native American History Month, and celebrating it, and it's so funny how we scheduled this show today, and not having that whole national celebration in mind at all.
I totally forgot about it. Neither one of us thought about it at the time.
I know. But there's always a reason and there's always a purpose to everything that we do. But in celebration of National Native American History Month in November, I just want to say that I'm humbled in the fact that the power and the strength that Native Americans had, first off, with their history and what they have gone through on this land, but also too with all of these stories that we're finding and all of these little things that they've held on to, or these little things that they're doing, Hopi Indian trying to keep the earth in stable and in balance. What other culture does that? What other society does that? Everybody else is me, 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 me. It's there's a lot more to learn from Native Americans than people realize. And I think celebrating this month, I think people should take the opportunity to pick one tribe, any name, Sioux, Lakota, Choctaw, Cherokee, whoever you want to, or whatever name comes to mind. Take that name and go online and Google it, and just learn a little bit about them. I think you'd be fascinated to see what correlation you may find, but what you can probably learn from them, and what spiritual sense that you can gain, what moral sense that can probably enlighten you as a person. I just find to be amazing, and to be amazing to be able to find this in a show topic on paranormal and UFO and extraterrestrial and Native Americans. I thought that was something to take away from. If anything else, take that away from tonight's show.
Thank you for saying that. That was really nice. But to go back on what you were saying about, keeping it quiet, keeping within the tribe, you have to remember part of that is the things that the tribes have gone through. You briefly mentioned about the Hopi. What happened to them happened to everybody, where the culture was literally I hate to keep saying it, but the white man tried to take the culture away from the native. I mean, Cherokee children were, Indian children were put into schools where they were told not to speak their native language anymore. They were forced to cut their hair. They were forced to believe in something else. So when it comes to keeping the stories, the oral histories and that, of course, it's going to stay within the tribe because you don't want to put it out there because someone's going to tell you, no, don't talk about that anymore. Someone's going to say, oh, no, you can't believe that. That's the reason why everything is kept within the tribe. That's why before you can really get a true story, someone has to know you, or either you have to be accepted. A lot of the keeping everything to ourselves is because of everything that's happened. When you have your whole culture, your whole life taken away from you, when you're forced to be moved from one location to another because someone says, oh, you know what, you'd be better off here, then that's a problem. That's why everything stays. I'm sorry.
We talked about cyclical and how things are in cycles. Let's just take current news right now. ISIS is going around saying, well, if you're not believing in my ideology and what we are standing for, well, then off your head goes. And that is basically the same situation that the Native Americans were in. When Europeans came over to this land, basically that's what they said to the Native Americans. If you're not abiding by what we want, then off your heads. And literally that's what they did. They scalped them, So it's cyclical. It is cyclical. It's the same thing happening now. It's just an ugly head in the Mideast right now, and so we're sort of, the white men are getting a taste of its own medicine pretty much at this point. And if you take that feeling right now that you are feeling when you hear the news about ISIS, think back to when the Native Americans were on the land and the Europeans came over. That's what they felt.
I mean, one thing that you did say, about learning about Native American culture, that's something that does have to happen. I believe it was Krista that said something about it, like how, or it was Chrisana that said, how the impression of Native American culture changed with television. There are so many misconceptions about what it is to be Native American. I get questions all the time. People say something and it's like, where did you get that from? That's not true. But there's like this general idea of what it is to be Native American that is not the truth. And do I truly know what it is to be Native American? No, I'm still learning. I'm still in that learning process. But I do know with the knowledge that I have, the things that I've learned, the things that I'm still learning, there's a lot out there that is not true. So I'm assuming that's going to be the same thing like with ISIS. They believe that, if you don't believe in what they believe in, then you're a demon. You're wrong. It's the same thing. Whatever happened back then, I can't speak for it. I wasn't through it, but I see the results of it. The whole alien UFO question. I can understand how these stories and these experiences are kept within the tribe, and that not a lot of people talk about it outside of the tribe. And it all just goes back to that you just keep everything to yourself, because if you let it out, you're going to lose it, or it's going to be taken away from you. And these are the elders' beliefs. These are the things that they were given, and it's their responsibility to give it to the younger generation. Now, is the younger generation listening? No. A lot of them now, when you talk about UFOs and all that, they're like, oh yeah, the aliens, they're referring to Hollywood, they're referring to the TV. But there's these oral histories that have to be brought forth, because if they're not, they're going to be lost. And that, I think, is the bottom line. I think the elders coming forth now with all this information, one, is because of the prophecies that they've been given, and then two, they have to, otherwise it will be lost. It will be totally lost. It is our culture going away. So the elders have a responsibility to bring it forth.
I read somewhere that the Mayans were the masters of time, and the Hopi Indians were the masters of space. The Native, as we talked before, Native Americans, they didn't have iPads. They didn't have iPhones. They didn't have laptops, computers, televisions, none of the garbage that distracts us today. They literally were concentrating on the land and in the sky. And so at night, or in the daytime as well, but mostly at night, they studied the constellations. They studied space. The Mayans studied time, and that's why they were so well known for their timekeeping. But the Native Americans were well known for their studying of space and their relationship with space and the universe and that connection between the two. And so obviously, when you talk about a group of people that you'd want to learn about UFO encounters or UFO sightings or alien encounters, it would be the Native Americans, because, or any ancient civilization that studied space and the constellations, because it wasn't just the Native Americans, but tonight's topic is Native Americans, that studied space and the relationship between the universe and the stars and the constellations, that they studied it, so they understood it very well. They stared at it for hours, for days, for years. They learned it so well that they understood what in the sky itself, whether or not something should not be there that was not there yesterday or was not there 10 minutes ago. So they could understand and see whether or not there was something in particular that was either alien to them, or was alien to the constellation, or to space itself. So the stories that the little stories that we talked about tonight, and the stories that you may read about Native American history on UFOs and extraterrestrials, I think tend to be a little bit more believable because they were masters of it. They understood it. They taught it basically to their fellow tribesmen, and in doing so, they learned what things were out of place, when things were out of place, and when things were out of place, that's when they studied things more. And I think that's when these interactions started to happen. I don't know if, I guess it was because they were descendants of these star people, or if Native Americans were here and alien encounters happened and mating happened, and then descendants started from there. I don't know. I don't know that story. I don't know how that happened. But I think because they were such space masters, if that's such a word, I don't even know. I think I just made that up. But then the stories could be a little bit more credible than any of the other historic reports that you may read.
Okay.
That's just my opinion, I think, because they've had such a strong relationship with it.
That relationship continues. There is a story in Miss Clark's book, and I keep referring to it because I'm totally fascinated by this book. It's called Encounters with Star People. It's the untold stories of American Indian alien encounters. There is a story in here of a woman named Gertie, and she claims that her father was an alien. And she comes across very, very sane. She doesn't come across as a kook. She said that it's not easy growing up knowing you're different. Her father was from a star near the Pleiades, and her mother could never pronounce the name. Both of her parents are dead now. Her father died in Michigan, and she goes on to say that they were married in Detroit. Her father's spaceship crashed in Lake Michigan. Her mother met him. She was working in an auto factory, and she ran into him in an alleyway on her way home from work. She said that their relationship, her father did not really communicate. He didn't speak a whole lot, but she said that the way that her parents communicated was almost like it was telepathic, that they knew what each other was thinking. This is a recent story. This is like within the last, 10 years. So obviously this relationship between, and I'm not just going to say Native Americans, between humans and aliens is still going on. I mean, according to this, they're here and they're mating with us. So while we have the legends from the ancients, that say this is happening, there are still stories today that are pointing towards this.
So what do we learn from what have you learned from what you've gathered?
I've learned that the aliens have been here. I've learned that they came here to help us. They came here to see what this earth was about. And obviously, I think they liked it. And I think they did like the human race. And I think that they wanted to help. And I think that they gave us a path to follow. And I don't think as human beings we're following that path. I think we are veering from it. And I think it's not going to have a good result if we stay on it. That's what I got from this.
So all of these UFO sightings are what people have been talking about before, are warning signs that they're here watching over. Because there's a lot of, UFO sightings that happen or claim to have happened around horrific events, when bad things are happening, there's usually some sort of UFO sighting that happens, and people are claiming that UFOs are sort of watching us and monitoring us to see how we are reacting to these things and making sure that we don't press the button and blow the entire place up, that we are keeping on a, regular line of life to move forward and to make a change and to make a difference. And therefore, and some of them are saying that they are actually, interfering and creating that change for us because we're too stupid to realize what we need to be doing. But I think what I've learned from all of this is that I don't know much about the Native American history and the UFO connections. I don't know much. I honestly can say that. There's a lot to learn about this because there's so many different tribes and there's so many different stories. And, of course, there's so many oral history that still has to be revealed or is being revealed that's sort of not out there, completely out there. So it's not cryptic, but yes, it may be cryptic in a way, sort of. So I think what I've learned is that I need to, if I do want to learn more about UFO and its history and the future of it, learning about it itself as a paranormal phenomenon, I think I should do a little bit more research within the Native American side of it to see what knowledge they have and what wisdom that they can shed upon that to see if I can fit it into what my beliefs are, or if I need to change anything that I need to change within my belief system in regards to the UFO phenomena.
Well, one thing I didn't even get to, I wanted to talk about the Brown Mountain Lights. It's lights that appear. It's in western North Carolina, and it actually was investigated when they did the Blue Book. And
Project Blue Book.
Supposedly what happens, Project Blue Book. Supposedly what happens every time the mountain lights are seen, people disappear. So that's one thing. I mean, there's abductions happening. The first reports came from Cherokee and Catawba Indian settlers, Civil War soldiers. I mean, those lights have been around for ages. I mean, so there's obviously something happening. There's obviously somebody coming here. What they truly want, I don't know. I don't understand it yet. There's so much to this topic that I could be researching this for the rest of my life and not find an answer. But I am accepting of a lot of it. I really am. And it's because it's coming from the elders. Well,
I want to thank our guest. Oh, wait a minute. We didn't have a guest tonight. That's right. Sorry. Our guest was you guys. No, it was a really interesting week, to say the least. But it forced us to actually go a little bit deeper than we would have if we would have had the guest on. And we would not have gone in the direction that we did, or probably would not have learned what we did. So, hey, maybe we can thank him for that. Who knows? What?
Nothing. I'm just going to leave that topic alone. I don't even want to go there.
Okay. All right. So I hope everyone enjoyed our babbling and our discussion on the topic. But it is a really interesting discussion. I don't know too many people who have tackled getting into the Native American side when you talk about UFOs and extraterrestrials and their history and knowledge and wisdom of it. And so it's really intrigued me to learn and to get more into the research of finding out about the stories. And who knows, maybe I may move away from the idea of some medicinal herbs and that the reasoning for those stories. Who knows? I don't know. But I had fun doing.
Clarity there, huh?
Maybe I should have
some
medicinal herbs.
Hey, I found out I might be part alien.
I always knew you were alien, but You're also half Mexican as well, so there you go. All right, so why don't we get on to the fan of the week?
Yes, and I was checking the chat room. This week, our Paranormal Review Radio fan of the week is Ginger Simmons. Now, Ginger doesn't say where she's from, but she's usually in the PRR chat room every week, and we're very good with that. Congratulations, Ginger. Some of her likes. She likes Nickelback. She likes ABBA, Imagine Dragons, Kansas, Ozzy Osbourne, Haunted Highway, Cake Boss, and, of course, she listens to Paranormal Review Radio. Congratulations, Ginger. Thank you so much for being a fan.
Yeah, congratulations, Ginger. Welcome to the Paranormal Review family. And if you guys want to be a Paranormal Review Radio fan of the week, just like us on Facebook or even subscribe to our YouTube channel at Paranormal Review Radio.
Okay. Well, you know what? Our connection with UFOs is something that has been happening for much longer than we realize. Our native ancestors were very aware of the beings that come from the skies. We have to embrace the legends and stories that tell of many of the things that we're seeing and experiencing now. The secrets of the skies may have already been answered. All we have to do is open our hearts and read them and learn. Tonight was an eye-opener. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did researching it. So, let's talk about the mysteries of the ancients. One of the most mystifying sites on Earth is Stonehenge. What secrets are hidden in this location? Paul D. Burley is an engineer, a geologist, and a researcher of ancient and indigenous symbolism, and he's had a fascination with Stonehenge. In his book, Stonehenge, As Above, So Below, Mr. Burley explores the original design and purpose of the Stonehenge ritual landscape, the oldest and best preserved example of astronomically related sacred symbolism ever constructed. Paul will share with us the results of his work and how we should view it today. It promises to be a night of enlightenment, so please join us as we look at the sacred site called Stonehenge. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for another Friday night. You know, this is becoming a weekly family gathering. Thank you, Anthony, for another night of fun. So, until next week, my fellow explorers, keep your eyes to the skies and have a paranormal week. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Paranormal Review Radio.